out, and I'm sorry that she's not here today, but this is an issue that will be on our agenda for a number of months to come. So, Jane, why don't you give us any updates that you have?
Right, so we left this in kind of a liminal state in September, and then I missed the last meeting due to training. So fill me in on anything that I missed going over this. This is the joint policy on hardwoods. It's a joint document between the board and the Fish and Game Commission to recognize the importance of hardwood resources and oak woodlands within the state and the pressures that face the ecosystems that support oak species. It was adopted in 1994, and this is an effort to update it and make it reflect current priorities. Most of the progress on this has been discussion of a potential joint workshop between CLSA and RMAC on oak woodland management grazing. And then discussion of protections to management of hardwood diseases and pests. And then Member Blake's suggestion for a potential regulatory option to manage for Liberty County. There have been no changes to text at this stage or at this point because we haven't gotten. Sorry, long pause. This is something where we are unclear I'm unclear of what our next steps are and what we should do towards updating the text.
Very good. So, looking back at my notes, and Member Forsberg-Carty might be able to add to it, but we talked about having staff prepare kind of an overview of issues and options before us, because there are questions about this board's authority on this subject area, and where we have the authority to move forward unilaterally, where we move forward in conjunction with the Fish and Game Commission. This board's authority is limited to timberlands, and so oak woodlands don't meet the definition. However, there are oaks on timberlands, and this board has provided some mechanisms and vehicles for the protection of oak resources, particularly black oak and white oak, on timberlands where they intersect with this board's authority. Member Blake's point that she brought up is that there are not similar provisions to provide that conservation where a landowner chooses to for tan oaks, and that was what she wanted to highlight. I don't want to speak for her, but that was sort of the gist of what I got. So she clearly needs to be here and weighing in on this. I mean, it's an issue that she's passionate about, and we're looking to her for leadership. But I think for the next meeting, if we could have an overview of the issues, the options, and the authorities. And then are we due for a follow-up with the Fish and Game Commission on their interest or willingness to revisit this joint policy?
Yes, I will contact them and let them and hear what their priorities are.
Okay.
For the January.
Okay. Very good.
I think that sums it up. I think what we asked for was to get it in writing so we can look at it together as a management committee to see the different regulatory pathways that the board has authority over. It would be really helpful for our review.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. So any agency comments or thoughts, and then we'll go to public comments and thoughts on this issue? About any other stakeholders or anyone here who has any comments on this joint statement?
Yes, I would think that I'm from Round Valley Indian Tribes. My identification as a Yuki tribe, and I know because we have so much land and we have so much growth, and we have a lot of the oak and different oaks. And I know in 1990, I believe, I sat on the council at that time, and there was, at that time, there was something in place for protection of the oak. at that time, and then it went into the species of the wing people and, you know, all to protect everything that we had. And that was in 1990. And I think it's really important to maybe talk about those things and where we can continue to protect. You know, we got to try to protect everything that we can as what the Creator gave us, you know, and to learn how to manage it. That's all it is we come together to manage what we need to. Because I did learn that that trees do get sick. You know, they do get diseased, but it's like, have we trained anybody that we need to go out with the different tribes on tribal territory and the natural resources to look at all these things and put in place? And is there money available for our people to be trained to say, we did the owl, we protected the owl, so we had the training of teaching someone how to go out and identify these owls and where they lived, because they was so not no more, you know. And so I think it's really important to try to contact as many of the native tribes as you can to get in here and have a voice so that we can continue to protect and manage what needs to be managed. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Good comments. I appreciate it. Thanks. Anyone else? Yeah, we'll go to Richard and then.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I think I was online and when I listened to it, and Dawn Blake's comments, it would be neat if you had those transcribed. She was rather articulate, I thought. But just in our experiences from the spray wars in '76 or whenever that was, and issues involving tan oak. Of course, tan oak is not an oak, but it is a hardwood. It's really nice that policies about hardwoods that we've found in trying to manage for fire recently and so forth, that actually helped of oaks, and specifically tan oaks in a lot of the areas that are fire prone. There's a beautiful hand-in-hand shaded fuel breaks on ridges, and also conservation and recovery of traditional tan oak acorn gathering areas. And of course, this fits into the policy of co-management. Of course, I guess the co-management is supposed to be just formally, I hesitate to use the word enforce, but encouraged on publicly held lands. But if you think about fire and climate, the hardwoods, tan oak and the other hardwoods, all are really a part of a climate response. And I understand, correct me, I've heard that hardwoods, tan oak, use less water than conifers. I don't know if this is true or not, but I've heard that is true. So that there needs to be a revamping of this joint policy, and you sort of mentioned some kind of an analysis, assessment of what's lacking and what might be added. But I think those things I mentioned, the hardwoods relationship to water, relationship to fire, relationship to culture, needs to be added to the aspects that talks about wildlife in here. It would really be good to have some people that have spent their lives or generations dealing with these hardwoods, and also different people that have studied it in the different universities. And this is really an important thing to get right.
Thank you, Richard. Appreciate it. Yeah, go ahead.
Great. Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Andy Wellspring. I just wanted to read today. It's not too long. A public comment that we submitted from our Coalition to Save Jackson State Forest. We submitted it for this meeting, but I would just like to read it aloud. thank you for the opportunity to comment on the Board of Forestry's and Fish and Game Commission's joint policy on hardwoods. While we are confining most of our comments primarily to tan oaks affected by management on Jackson Demonstration State Forest, we would be remiss if we failed to take note that the current joint policy on hardwoods from 1994 covers hardwoods in California on public and private lands. It makes no mention of the past and current needs and uses of hardwoods by Native Americans across the state. Nor does the policy acknowledge the need to consult with Native people in establishing a new joint policy pursuant to Governor Newsom's Executive Order N-1519. The joint policy on hardwoods should apply not only statewide, but should be specifically tailored for Jackson and for all other state forests as appropriate. So regarding tan oak trees are essential to the culture and sustenance of Native people. Governor Newsom's Statement of Administration policy regarding Native American ancestral lands, regarding tribal co-management on ancestral lands, it calls for, among other things, early consultation with tribes on all aspects of land management on Jackson, the ancestral home of the Northern Pomo and Coast Yuki tribes. In addition, AB 52, amendments to CEQA, requires that a lead agency consult with Native American tribes on any proposed project that has the potential to cause substantial adverse change to a tribal cultural resource. Yet, CAL FIRE has not even considered consulting with local tribes before killing vast swaths of these vital trees across the cultural landscape of the forest. Now, Measure V. In Mendocino County, a law was passed called Measure V. Jackson is non-compliant with Measure V. It's a Mendocino County ordinance that voters passed in 2016 by more than 60%. Measure V states that trees that are intentionally killed, most commonly with the chemical imazapyr, and when they are left standing for more than 90 days, they are being declared a public nuisance because, quote from the ordinance, they present an extreme fire hazard. They also impede rapid suppression of fires and pose a safety risk to firefighters. Yet Jackson, under current policies, continues to kill and leave standing unwanted tan oak trees for indefinite periods after injecting the herbicide imazapyr into their trunks, a process known as hack and squirt. The combined effects. CAL FIRE has not considered the impacts to tan oaks of hack and squirt added to the effects of sudden oak death, a lethal pathogen which has spread from Big Sur to Oregon since its discovery in Marin in the mid-1990s, killing more than 100 million hardwood trees, mostly tan oaks. Nor has CAL FIRE considered the effects of killing tan oaks on other species associated with them. For example, tan oaks are host to prized mushrooms such as matsutake, lion's mane, and black trumpets. Their acorns feed a long list of birds, such as band-tailed pigeons and acorn woodpeckers, as well as mammals such as bear and deer, squirrels, and many other rodents, and especially the dusky-footed wood rat, who in turn is an important prey item in the listed northern spotted owl's diet. Tan oaks are a critical component of forest health and diversity and must be protected. Regarding climate change, the current joint policy on hardwoods from 1994 makes no mention of climate change, now an acknowledged threat to life as we know it on planet Earth. Carbon sequestration is considered an important bulwark against catastrophic weather events. Tan oaks and other hardwoods sequester carbon and play a critical role in restoring ecological balance and building resilience to buffer the impacts of climate change. We have some recommendations that the Management Committee should fully reconsider their policies on hardwoods and in particular on tan oaks in collaboration with local tribes before proceeding further. The Management Committee should make a recommendation that Jackson come into compliance with Measure V. The Management Committee should fully address and take into consideration the effects of climate change and its projected impacts on hardwoods. The Management Committee should fully consider the combined effects of disease, toxins, development, and climate change on hardwoods. We recommend that tan oaks and all oaks statewide be afforded the strictest protections in order to prevent further decline of this already imperiled species plural, for the reasons stated above. We trust that your final joint policy on hardwoods will reflect the changes needed to protect tan oaks and all hardwoods. Thank you.
Thanks, Andy. And the board did receive a copy of your your comments. So
Great,
appreciate
great.
that.
We'd love to discuss if you want to.
Matthew Simmons, Environmental Protection Information Center. I echo everything Andy said, but I just wanted to hone in on one particular thing. I review a lot of timber harvest plans, and a lot of them will have hardwood treatment, herbicide, hack and squirt. And then I keep reviewing, and eventually you get to a place where sudden oak death is taken over, and the timber harvest plan says, oh, no need to do the herbicides here. All the hardwoods are already dying due to sudden oak death. And I just think, as you're doing this overall strategy, considering hardwoods, thinking about that reality and thinking about the need to do herbicide treatments in the current situation, particularly when we know that entries for timber harvest are one of the ways that sudden oak death is spreading to our forests. It should be something on the mind of the management committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Richard?
Yeah, again, usually when I have something to say, I'm saying it on behalf of Forest Forever also, which I am now. But there was one aspect that Matt brings up and relates to herbicides and oaks and fire, is that different organizations are actually trying to, because they banned the use of herbicides, are trying to control the balance between conifers and hardwoods through the use of fire. And a lot of this is like really dependent upon a whole new or old relationship where it's not better living through chemistry, but better living through on-the-ground stewardship through generations and the use of fire. Just like to bring that up.
Yeah, appreciate that, Richard. Any other comments? Any thoughts? Oh, sir.
Just one quick thing. I just would really like, even though she's not here, I feel like I should say it anyway. I'd really like to thank Member Blake for bringing this up for the state of California. This policy is woefully out of date. Just speaking for myself here, but I really appreciate that because oak trees have been considered sacred to people all over the planet. Literally, like wherever oak trees grow, they're a major food source. I know that even in my ancestry from Europe, that oak trees were venerated, and they were attacked. Those oak trees were attacked when people came to Northern Europe, when the Christians came from Southern Europe, and because they saw how much they meant to the people, and so. I really appreciate Member Blake stepping up for the oak trees, and I hope that that you all on this committee will support her.
I have it like we were talking about the studies of the oak trees and a lot of the pesticides, because I know like where we're at, like we have oak trees right on the main road, what we call the main road, 162, two-lane road, and the spraying, and then you could see the trees dying and that kind of stuff. But one thing I do know that I don't hear about is that even when that oak tree is falling and it fell on the ground, that oak tree is still alive because from that oak tree falling and laying there, it provides us the good mushrooms. So that's where you can find the good mushrooms. So it continues after it does its term. It feeds back into the earth and then it grows more food for us to have. So I know a lot of people don't think about stuff like that, but when we live on the land and we know that and we see that, and it just came to me when we talked about how much these oak trees provide to us on a natural level and feeds us really good food, and then even when that oak tree falls on the ground and goes back into Mother Earth, it continues to feed us with the mushrooms. Thank you.
Good point. Thank you. Yeah, good question. Any online comments?
The only type of online comments that we have are related to the audio.
Oh, we're having that issue again, huh?
Yeah.
Well, it limits the number of people online. All right, well, we look forward to continuing this conversation and certainly appreciate Member Blake's leadership on it. So it is a complex issue at the intersection of a lot of different interests. I mean, there's certainly tremendous ecological and cultural values associated with oaks, including tan oaks. There's also an intersection with commercial timber interests, and I'm sure we'll be hearing that perspective as well, and we'll discuss the issue and work through it as we always do. But I think it starts with identifying what our options are, what the issues are, and what our authorities are. So if we could get some clarity on that for the January meeting, that would be very helpful, and then we can advance the discussion from there. So appreciate all of your comments on that. And I think we're ready to jump to the final agenda item, which is discussion of 2024 rulemaking priorities. And this is an exercise that the board goes through every year, and then it gets finalized typically at the December meeting, and it establishes the committee priorities for each of the 3 committees moving into the upcoming year. So we had a discussion last month about it. We revise some things, move some things around, and have some sort of tentative priority items. And today I'd like to just sort of walk through all of those and hopefully finalize our priorities. And then, do we need board approval then of our priorities, or do we just vote on them as a committee and then submit them to the full board tomorrow?
It's submitted to the full board, or does it require board approval?
No, I think it just gets included, the annual plan, which the board will approve.
Got it.
For the annual report.
Got it. Okay, so that's the intent today, is to formalize our priorities moving forward. So we've got a list, priority 1, 2, and 3, but frequently we'll look at our workload, and if there's an item that might be a number 2 or 3, but if it's sort of a lighter lift, we might pick that up even before addressing all the priority ones. But generally it indicates the priority of each of these items. So I think we could probably skip the overview of completed or substantially completed items.
Oh, don't do that.
Don't do that? You want me to bring up meadows and wet areas again, Richard? Really?
Oh, that's always enjoyable to talk about. But I'm talking about Jackson under said priority 1 for 2023.
No, I'm not going to skip over that, Richard.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm so reassured now. But this is all it says for 2023. I haven't seen the 2024 section.
Sorry. Oh, good catch, Richard. So we have a typo in there. It should say priority 1 for 2024.
Okay.
You earned your keep.
No, I haven't. No, I haven't seen the recompense.
All right. So you can read the items that are completed or substantially completed last year, and we'll jump to the priority 1 items for 2023. And the first is review of state forest management plans. So, the board's, this committee's responsibility is to review and then recommend for approval by the full board of state forest management plans as prepared by CAL FIRE. And we've got several that are hopefully coming our way in the upcoming year. So we've got the Latour Demonstration State Forest, the Jackson Demonstration State Forest, and then the Pacific Forest and Watershed Land Stewardship Council. This is the new acquisitions for which CAL FIRE is preparing plans. So this is listed as one of our priority 1 items for 2024. So is there anyone here who feels that ought not be a priority for 2024? The board has it as a number 1. Kevin?
Yeah, Member Jason, Member Forsberg Party, I'd love to give you an update on just kind of where we stand.
That would be helpful.
The management plan. So I think Latour has been submitted to you now for your reading pleasure over the winter break. And so I think we hope to be agendized on your January meeting. We did the tour of the tour last year. And what you see in the management plan should fully reflect what we talked about there. The Jackson Demonstration State Forest Management Plan, we've been doing a lot of public outreach on just what approach we're going to take to actually reviewing and revising the management plan. So we spent much of the year doing public outreach on that, working with the Jackson Advisory Group. We just had the Jackson Advisory Group in their November 15th meeting approve us with moving forward with the scope of work that we've developed to get a consultant. The scope of work envisioned almost a 2-year period for us to review and revise the management plan. So that has it potentially showing up on your desk again in 2026, at least for the committee. We do welcome, any input and participation during the review process that you guys have the capacity to provide. It envisions about a 1-year period after we get a consultant in place to write a draft management plan. So, probably sometime in early 25, another 6 months to publicly review that draft, and then bring that back, potentially provide it to some type of scientific review. I think we're trying to figure out if we might get that from the Wildfire and Forest Resilience Task Force Science Advisory Committee, and then bring it to you for consideration. So again, with that process, we're looking at probably 6 months to get a consultant in place, maybe 8 months to get a consultant in place, and then a year and a half, maybe a little longer before it's delivered to you. So sometime in 2026, but we will be actively in the review process starting towards late next year once we have a consultant in place. For the watershed lands, I do expect that, I would request that you maybe hold that in your priority list, and expect that toward the end of this year, we might see some of the more minor properties coming to you for review. So that would be Cow Creek, or what we're now calling the Noble, or the Miller Demonstration State Forest. And we stopped there on our way up to the tour. Yeah. And then the 2,500 acres we got in Battle Creek. There's Jason Paverko and his staff this year spent substantial time putting in their permanent plot network and starting to develop the information they're going to need to produce a management plan. So I'd expect either late this year or early 25, that'll be coming back to you. And then normally on our proposed schedule, we would have Soquel, it'd be up for review in 2024. They're going to start the process in 2024 with their advisory group. I don't expect it to actually come to you until 2025, so I don't think you have a placeholder for it this year, but just as a heads up, that process will be starting and concurrent with all the rest of our management plan reviews we're going to have going on. So it'll be a busy year for us, and we will definitely keep you updated and provide you information when you need it, and welcome your participation whenever you're available.
Okay, so maybe it would be helpful if board staff could identify the tentative timelines for each of the various forests, and perhaps even add Soquel to the list. The department is working on the plan, anticipate submitting to the board in 2025. I think that would be helpful. Can you talk, I guess, specifically about Jackson, about engagement with tribal interests in the scoping process and development of the plan, and what's being done there?
Yeah, so within the scope of work we developed, we imagined a series of 15 public meetings, 10 for the initial draft, and at least 5 once we have that draft to get a second round of public comment. We also anticipate a second, or like a kind of a parallel process where we're going to go, and we have invitations to hold meetings at 3 different tribal government offices to directly solicit information from them and their members. And that came as a suggestion from our Tribal Advisory Council that we've been working with at Jackson, was that we actually go to the tribal government offices and hold the meetings there to make sure that they were accessible and folks were available to show up and let us know what's happening. I think, from the conversations that we're having with our Tribal Advisory Council, what comes into a public document in the management plan are probably going to be very, very high level, things that they would like to make public. So, kind of the context in which the landscape of Jackson exists, some of the important aspects of, its cultural relevance to the tribes, and some of the important overarching goals. But it'll probably be fairly light on some of the specifics that are being held a little more confidential. So,
Sure.
So the nature of it being a public document, this won't represent the full engagement of our relationship with the tribes. But we do expect it to do a much better job than the last plan at setting that cultural context.
Okay, thank you. Yes, go ahead.
I've been going to the last couple of meetings because I'm from Round Valley and I do know the territory. And we are, my ancestral land goes from Round Valley over to we call them the coastal Yukis, and we just had received land back as identifying as the coastal Yukis, the Blue Beach. And now that there's been more connection with the land and with people that we got working on the land to identify the Jackson Forest, we're finding more and more that there's more Yuki connection to that land. And so we just recently got involved. I went to the meeting, I asked who these tribes were. They're not allowed to say, because from when I come from Round Valley, we have 7 different tribes, so it's not just one tribe. We have 7 different tribes. You have, adjacent to Jackson Forest, you have Point Arena, Manchester, and then when you go over the mountain, you have Sherwood, you have Potter Valley, you have all these tribal entities surrounding you, as well as the Sinkion Council. And so when I reached out and found out about the meeting and what was happening, and say, wait a minute, it's not that we don't want it to have, we want a management on the land. We want to be involved. We want to know. We don't want you guys continue to destroy our ancestral land and keep destroying the burial sites and the sites that our people went to go and gather. So our people would come from the inland to the coast. They would walk there and they would travel. They'd go over there and they would do their harvest during those seasons, and they would meet other tribes and they would do their trading. And so this is just a short history about what had happened. And so I'm finding out, coming from the 7 different tribes that I'm from, that our tribal government has no idea. Every time I ask who the other tribes were, so we're just getting on board with all this while they're moving ahead and saying, oh, we got all this tribal support over here. None of the other surrounding tribes know who these tribes are. And there are 2 entities. Who is the tribal council that you're working with, whoever you guys elected or whatever. We have no information on that as far as like what is the tribal relationship. So I'm here to say there's none. I mean, maybe a couple of them, and the tribes that they are working with, we have over 5,000 people enrolled on our reservation. So is that concerning the 2 tribes that I'm thinking that they're negotiating with and giving them the okay? So maybe they're up to 1,300 people with the 2 tribes combining, and we got 5,000 enrollment people. We have a tribal government, we have our natural resources, we have our temple, we have all these people that I'm trying to bring into to say, hey, look at here, these people are saying, Cal Fire, Forestry, whatever, they're all saying, oh yeah, they got tribal relationships and they're doing this and that. So I asked the JAG board, where's your resolution of support? That's number 1 tribal law, is that any tribal government that is going to work with the entity has to have a resolution. That's our law. Clear out through the state of California. There's no different. If you don't have a resolution, you should have a letter of support. Where's that letter of support? Nobody had none of it. So, and then, I mean, it kind of makes me upset because I'm here, I'm trying to open the door and say we need to negotiate, we need to sit down, we need to do all these things that is in place already by AB 52. It's already a given. It already tells you what you need to do, and it's not being done. Maybe very little, but what about all the surrounding tribes around there that should have an input? Because, and so I'm here to say that I know everything's new and not everybody understands the tribal government and what our laws are, but I'm here to say, number one, if you don't have a resolution, you don't have that tribal support.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, number two, if you don't have a letter of support, it's just word of mouth. So, thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments specific to making this issue a #1 priority for 2024? Richard?
It obviously should be #1 priority, but one of the main points that it started off actually with former Director Porter, who asked the management committee to take on the Jackson issues, and it was emphasized about the tribal issues, but I think it was over the whole thing too. And you all had a informational hearing in what, in 2022, I think, with the tribal relations paper. And see, where your position, what Edwina has described is like, I mean, no disrespect for Kevin and CAL FIRE's attempts to work with the JAG and set things up for the board. But this issue with the new management plan for Jackson, the public interest and interaction is way beyond this system that's been set up with the JAG. There needs to be a broad airing so that input, because this is the largest guidepost state forest, and a new management plan should take into account a lot of things we talked about with the hardwoods, moving forward, because this is should lay down a template, a model for how forests should be managed in California. You're not going to give every private landowner necessarily to do that, but you need examples, everything from having 3 or 4 different ways that you could argue is recovery for the forest, right? Different selections, the alternative selections. There's all things that need to be looked at, and Jackson is an incredible resource, and I think that your committee and the board needs to weigh in regularly as opposed to waiting for things to be hammered out. And maybe discussion could happen tomorrow. The charter for Jackson, I understand, calls for consensus by the Jackson Advisory Group, right? So the public is sort of a little bit burned on that one because there was a consensus new management plan in 2011, had Jerry Mello on it, Linwood Gill, Linda Perkins. It was a whole array, and they worked on it for 2.5 years, and they came out with a consensus and was presented to the board. The board selected which parts of the consensus they wouldn't accept. So there's a real problem there, and this just happened over this Camp 1 harvest plan. There were 2 dissenting non-consensus people and 1 abstention. And I asked the woman from State of the Redwoods League, was it a hard abstention? Anyway, and it goes back in the lap. So this is a real public credibility factor to deal with, because that's why people are skeptical, because all the work that went in with that whole array of interest, the Board of Forestry, and to my mind, sort of just peremptorily excluded a lot of it, and it was difficult. And a lot of people that were really heavily engaged and put a lot of, they got disturbed and dropped out from interaction.
It's helpful to have the historical perspective. You've been at this longer than I have, so glad you're here to relay that.
No flattery, please.
It's just reality. I wasn't involved in 2011, so.
No comment. Never mind.
Yeah, go ahead.
Matthew Simmons, Environmental Protection Information Center. I absolutely think that a residential plan should be a priority, and I think it should be a funded priority. You know, we're already starting to see Jackson propose new arms plans in order to get more money off the forest. And I think that this process is going to require some calmness and some time, and that having fights over how the forest pays for itself isn't going to be conducive to that. And so I think the board should consider funding to CAL FIRE in order to do this process over the next couple of years. I also think, you know, the board has conveniently given itself an excuse not to do environmental review for these new management plans. You kind of attached it on to information gathering documents like surveys. I just think, considering the amount of controversy regarding Jackson and this forest, looking for ways to avoid environmental review might not be the wisest decision. I think it's important that the agency and the public have a full understanding of the impacts of proposed management. Kind of going off of that, it's still sort of unclear to me the extent of review and changes that are being envisioned by the board and CAL FIRE. Mr. Conway, in one of the documents, referred to only a couple of select portions of the management plan being changed. Other people have referred to it as a new management plan, which implies to me that there would be larger revisions. And so I guess I'm looking for more clarification on what we're really talking about. You know, a lot of the stuff that CAL FIRE is talking about changing sounds really exciting, but I think it has to be sort of a holistic view of the whole plan, you know, including designations on the forest map of what kind of activities are allowed where. I think if you're serious about co-managing with tribes, you should be opening up that discussion with them, right? Because going to a tribe and saying, hey, we've already decided all this back in 2011, and what do you think of what we did, and not be willing to change any of that doesn't really make sense. So yeah, definitely a priority, but you got a lot of work ahead of you.
Okay, thank you, appreciate it. One more, Richard.
One more quick point, I guess. You know, the management committee could have a special discussion about what co-management means for Jackson and co-management. Get all the different. There's been a lot of things going on, from the Winneman Wintu to Blues Beach by Westport to places in Southern California. There needs to be a real dynamic discussion with all the parties about what co-management really means, because one of the things I know Michael Hunter, when he was more involved with Jackson, was that co-management is not just a better consultation process. You know, it's a co-management in some order. And a lot of stuff we talked about involving hardwoods is an integral part of that. But you know, like CAL FIRE, no disrespect again, but you know, when it was said about how they were consulting, we sent out 20 letters to the different tribes on the list, right? And that's a problem. That really brings it up too. There isn't an enabling process that actually enables not only co-management, but enables adequate consultation. The tribes are you know, things that are very important for them to be engaged with. And CAL FIRE over the years has had a Native American advisory group, and it goes for a bit, it gets things done, and then it gets stagnant, or, you know, and then there needs to be something that really has a real connection and a real, what do they call that, enablement. There's a word begins with a C about having the capability to interact.
Capacity?
Capacity! That's it. Yeah, there really needs to be real capacity, co-capacity, so that when you write a letter or you ask for input, it's not either hidden or not happened, and anybody that gets the letter, each of the tribes has their own heavy-duty stuff to deal with their own people, and they come to a broader regional or statewide, you know, the Heritage Commission is something, you know, they're sort of supposed to have the backs of the tribes, you know. 'Cause that's Jerry Brown's first term, I think, the Native American Heritage Commission, and they're supposed to have the Native American heritage protection, you know, and then AB 52 is tied into that too. But anyway, there's a lot to go, and that's, I think, your committee needs not to just wait till CAL FIRE brings you up. How do you like this? You know, there are issues that you can help bring out to the greater public. There will be a much better process with more public knowledge and potential buy-in to make a whole better trust situation.
Okay, thanks, Richard. Andy?
Thanks. Yeah, thanks, Richard. And thanks to the board for having time on your agenda tomorrow for the Coalition to Save Jackson State Forest. We'll be back tomorrow. But on this particular note, I couldn't agree with Richard more. Just as someone who's born and raised in California, lived here my whole life, I'm not native, I'm white, and when the governor announced, like, we're going to do co-management with tribes, and he said, you know, like other leaders of the world have said, we have to make amends for the horrible things that happened when California was created. It made me feel like I just almost didn't even believe it was really happening. I was like, this is amazing. Like, and you all are part of the state of California government. So I agree with Richard. Don't wait for CAL FIRE to bring you a plan. It's like, please get more involved as another branch of the state, another level of the state. I know you all are connected in various ways, but like, I'm speaking for myself, but there's a lot of frustration in the community that lives near Jackson Forest, where we're like, we've been asking for a lot of things, like changes, you know? And then all of a sudden, instead of moving forward with coming up with co-management with the tribes, CAL FIRE's like, we're going to make a new management plan, and it's going to be green, and you know, it's going to be eco-friendly and all that. We're like, no, you come up with a co-management agreement first, and then the task of the co-managers, which is tribes and CAL FIRE, they come up with the management plan. This is coming up with the management plan now, and then asking tribes to come in on it is like, oh, we already made a new management plan. We're not going to do that again for 10 years. So make the co-management agreement. The state can make the co-management agreement happen. And then you don't need a consultant. You've got people whose ancestors have been living here for thousands of years. They know how to manage the land. You don't need to hire a consultant. You could hire the tribes whose land it already is. And they will help us avert climate catastrophe by bringing it back, right? They grew beautiful old growth forests that we all want to go and see on trips. You know, we all want to go there and camp out and stuff. And that's their legacy. Their legacy is not to destroy it and cut it down every 25 years. Like, they know how to bring it back too. I believe it. I've been learning about traditional ecological knowledge, and I can't say enough of support for it. And I've just really encouraged the Board of Forestry to take a very active role in this and say, why are you making a management plan, CAL FIRE, before you make a co-management plan? Thank you.
Thanks, Andy. Any other comments on this issue before we move to the next?
I have one more.
Okay.
If you don't mind.
Well, I let Richard have 3, so I can...
Right. Catching up,
Get
Richard.
forward, get forward.
So I just want to give you guys some something to feed off and understand and relate to, because I know it's really hard. We've never had that chance to really bring out our history and the connection, because it goes way back. And our people are like, you know, the Yuki people are just like way before anybody could even think of it. Our language is one of the very extinct languages that we can't make connection with. We're trying to bring it back. But so I just wanted to say that when CAL FIRE and the forestry works with these tribes and they say they're Pomo tribes, well, one thing that I do know and that I learned by oral history through my grandparents and my mom and on with surrounding elders around me, and learned the oral history about our territories, that that we all had individual names as clans. We were never identified, like I do know that we're not all identified as Pomo. And if they say, okay, well, we talk to the Pomo people, that's Pomo land. But you're talking about Pomo people coming all the way over to this side of Pomo people. So if you say you're going to talk to Pomo people, then you have to include everybody. You know, all the Pomo Nation. So you're talking huge. You're talking about more connection than the surrounding tribes there. So that's something that really bothered me, like, okay, Pomo land, but then I began to think and I began to talk and I began to remember the oral history that all our people had names and they weren't just a bunch lumped into one. And that to identify those, like we always say, we have the coastal Yukis, we have the mountain Yukis, and we have the valley Yukis. That's a lot of territory, you know. But that is, now that's being documented. It's been documented. This is this area over here, this over here. I mean, you get into the history and our people, there's no boundaries for our people, but each tribe had a tribal name. And it wasn't just that. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention that, you know, I mean, sometimes it takes an interest in people like, wow, you know, I'm going to look that up. I'm going to find out about that, you know, because I really want to know. I really want to help these Native people. I hear what they have to say, and I know the struggle. When our Yuki committee established the Round Valley tribes with the Hastings College, because they wrote their own history and what they did to our people. And it was hard. It was hard to go before these people and say, hey, wait a minute, and remind them, this is what you wrote about, this is what you said, you made this law to massacre our people, you made that law okay. Then you turned around and you made a law to go and scalp our people, and that was a law. So you didn't get punished for that. But we now have to live with that and look for that forgiveness and look for that healing. And so this is part of the land that we're trying to save. It's our water, it's Mother Earth that gives us life, that gives you life, that you walk on every day. Every time we pick up a bottle of water, that's life. And where did we get that life from? We get that life from Mother Earth. So I just want to end with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
I'd just like to throw a little history into the mix. You know, indigenous people never really owned Mother Earth. We were just part of it.
Right.
And in history, when the Europeans came here, they went to one tribe and, hey, we'll buy it here. Sure, I take this nice bottle and take it. Yeah, you can have it. They didn't understand that, but it wasn't their land to sell. And no offense, I guess I'm supposed to say, but when you talk to one tribe about the land and they agree with you, you have to talk to all the tribes in that area because they all have an interest in it.
Right.
One can't sell one person's interest in it. The tribe has always been everybody. So when you go with a package deal for somebody, you have to go to everybody, all the tribes, and tell them what's happening and agree. You know, because that's what's happened in the past, in history. You know, I just thought I'd throw that out there. Sorry if I get emotional.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, any other comments on this?
The
Well,
whole,
good-
the
good
whole,
conversation.
the whole package?
No. We're done, Richard.
I have one short comment. I don't, this is a high point right now, but you know, this, the last page, topics raised by the 2023 call for
Oh,
regulatory
hang on.
review.
No. We're going to walk through all the other
Oh, you are? Okay.
priorities. Yeah, we'll have
Okay.
discussions.
I'll be
about all
patient.
that. Yeah. All right, last comment on this state forest plan review. Andy?
It's a quick one, because I just want to say, like, it's gonna take time. It's gonna take a long time. Like Larry's saying, like Edwina's saying, it's like, you gotta talk to a lot of tribes. You gotta talk to a lot of people. It's no small deal for the state of California to make amends for what has happened on this beautiful land. Like, it's a really big deal. It's going to be hard. It's going to take a long time. So you guys can fund Jackson. They don't need to do logging until this is figured out, right? Like, it's got to be, there has to be time to figure it out. And if we don't do it right, then it's going to be like, oh, California had this idea that they want to make things right, but they didn't take the time. They just kind of kept on going. Just kept on going, business as usual. And we have an opportunity, you know, to make things right. And you all can put on the brakes at Jackson as one example place where there are a lot of tribal people standing up and saying, yeah, we're ready for you, California, to make amends. You can make amends with us. And that takes courage, because how many times has California treated them right? Not enough. And so it's going to take time. And please, like, let that happen and support it. And it could be a beautiful thing.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate all the perspectives. Do you have any comments?
No,
before we
thank you
move on?
for everyone's comments, and anyone else online? No, we're having audio problems, but.
That happens every month, by the way.
Oh,
That's probably, that audio thing, that's probably illegal.
All right, we're not going there. So the next priority one item for consideration is utility right-of-way operations. And so we did receive a comment letter from PG&E regarding that. This was an issue that we made a lot of good progress on back in 2021. And I believe we're in a position now where we can revisit this issue and kind of pick up where we left off. Now, we'll talk about the less than 3 acre conversion thing in a minute, but if you remember, those of you who were engaged in 2021, those two issues were all kind of balled up together. So if staff could detangle that and isolate the utility right away from the less than 3 acre conversion, and that'll enable this committee to attack both of those. So